Welcome to Pario magazine, where I chat with individuals who have a desire to create. Today, I'm joined by an Australian wrestler who is a former PCW Ignition champion and OPW Tag Team champion alongside Gangrel, even though he's not a vampire himself. These days, he is becoming one of the biggest names and fan favourites in Melbourne City Wrestling and around the country. Welcome to Pario magazine, Edward Dusk.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, we're here today to chat about your journey through the world of pro wrestling. Before we dive into that, though, do you want to give our audience a little intro as to who Edward Dusk is away from the ring?
Away from the ring, I think if you take wrestling away, I'm not the most exciting person. I spend all my time with my wife and my dogs, and then the rest of all my time probably putting far too much mind, love, and effort into wrestling. It really is. I know it's a bit cliche to say, "Oh, it's my everything," but it really is what I spend pretty much all my time doing. I mean, at gym as well, I suppose. Very into like health and fitness on many levels, not just like physically, but mentally as well. But that's really it. If you take wrestling away, it kind of puts into
Yep.
perspective how little I do outside of it.
No, that's great. I think that idea of you constantly thinking about wrestling, that seems to show a lot in your promo packages. They're very cinematic. Where does that sort of part of your creativity come into it?
I think a little bit of always being creative. Like as a kid, as a child, it was, art, drawing, writing stories, things like that. And then wrestling kind of was all of it all together. It was seeing Sting was like my first experience with wrestling. So like
Same here.
Sting to my childhood brain was like, it's Batman, but he's a real person. So that was like, I think why everything kind of went off towards wrestling. But it was kind of that when I was young, and then as a teenager, kind of like becoming more involved with reading, with comics, with movies, television. Um, I wanted to study film for the longest time, mainly because I just didn't think wrestling was an attainable thing. I live away from Melbourne. I'm about 2 hours away from where all the schools are, so I didn't grow up around the schools. So I just didn't really. I loved wrestling, but it was just kind of that thing of like, well, I can never actually do it. Um,
Mhm.
so always been creative, always had like that creative outlet. Music as well. Music was a big one. I played in bands all through my teenage years. So songwriting as well. And then when I actually found a way to do wrestling, I think that kind of became the outlet for everything through my life. Writing, storytelling, art, expression, all of it. So I think that the reason probably why it reflects so much is because I think I've got a lot of influences into what I do. It isn't just, well, I like wrestling, so I'm going to do wrestling stuff. I'll try and make a promo and it might be influenced, by a film or a book or even music. It's a thing I've found with a few other wrestlers is that a lot of people look at wrestling in a similar vein to music. So I think that it's just having all those creative influences throughout life, and then wrestling kind of becomes the vessel for them all to kind of be expressed. A long-winded answer, but that's that's where like my heart really is on all of this stuff is the creative expression side of it. So that's really my heart of it all, I think.
Do you work with video outside of wrestling, or is that just something that you do as a little extra side hobby?
No, I don't know anything about video editing or beyond just like a bare bones thing of what it should kind of, I guess, look like from again, like study, like wanting to study film. And you can go to like I spent tons of time as a teenager watching like your YouTube videos where people break down frames of movies and things like that. But for me, none of it. I just learnt video editing and things like that by doing it. I think my promos have gotten better over time because I've gotten better as like a wrestler, but also gotten better as like a creative on that front. But the other side of it, and a very big part of it, is my wife she studied photography through university. So she's very good at bringing it all together. So I can have an idea in my head, and she's very good at helping me film it. She does all the filming for me, and I'll then go away and do all the editing. But it's not without her being able to put it all together that it will then take the shape it does. I've tried to do stuff on my own, and I can get it to look good, and I can edit it and make it look all nice. But I can see the difference when her eye puts together a shot versus when I put together a shot, because I'm more worried about, does it look good? Whereas she's like composing the frame, the rule of thirds, all those little nitty gritty things that I know, but I don't understand. So it's not something I'm good at by any stretch. I'm sure if someone who was a qualified video editor watched me edit something, they'd probably cry. Um, but it's just one of those things where just over time, I suppose I've just learnt a way of doing it. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I found that editing my own videos, it might not be the technical right way to do it, but it works for me, so I'm going to do it that way.
And sometimes that's all it needs to be. I mean, there's something to be said, I think, in any medium of like, if you if you learn how to do something, it can help. You know, you have the blueprint, but also coming to something with just like the wanting to like create something might mean that you kind of create your own vision of it or your own version of it because you don't have all the rules and the limitations that other people might. Whereas if you were to study video editing and were to be taught how to do it, you learn that way, and you can still branch off and create your own techniques. But I definitely think there is a version of creativity where you have to teach yourself, and you learn by teaching yourself. So I think that adds something to any creative art form.
And I guess that sort of feeds into wrestling as well because there is like the basic moves, but putting actual matches together and then how you execute on those moves, that's your own little flair. How have you found that
Mm.
process?
Oh, 100%, man. I think it's something that shines in professional wrestling between like the difference between good and great is very small. It's a cliche saying, but I think that it is in those little things like that where there is a good example without getting lost on fucking 1,000 tangents that I absolutely could is there is a very proper clinical way to do a suplex, right? When you learn, it's right. You put both feet down, we hook the head, you brace the waist, we post together, we go up and we go over, right? Very simple. But then you look at someone like Bret Hart, right? When he does his suplex, he kicks his leg out the whole time. He doesn't have his base. He starts with his strong base and then he kicks his leg out as he does. That might not be perfect. But it's the most beautiful suplex you'll ever see. Um, and I think there's something to be said where like adding that little flair to things is how you can take it from just like I will do a running knee versus saying like Kenny Omega doing his running knee. It's a very distinct, that's what that one looks like. So it becomes a bit more of your own. Um, but it's even adding other things like intensity. That's always the one that I kind of look to is I feel that everything I do should feel aggressive, intense, calculated in a sense. So everything I try to make sharp. I've got like I love doing like a big belly to back suplex where I'll try and get them up nice and high, and then we just slam down to the ground as fast as we can. So you get this nice moment of the move, but then it's almost like diverted by the fact that it comes down so quickly. So you kind of add that little your own little I guess, flavors and seasonings to it. And I think that having that in your head, whether you're doing it consciously or subconsciously, is an important thing. Matt Hader is a great example of someone who does everything pretty, like a lot of the moves he does are very fundamental. He's not out here doing 630s or anything like that. It's a basic move set, but because he adds the Matt Hader flair to everything, now it's Matt Hader's moveset. Whereas without that, someone could come along and copy his match beat for beat, but it will fall short because it doesn't have that little extra that he adds onto it, which is why having that is so important.
Is there someone that you took a lot of inspiration from early on in your career?
Edge and Christian definitely were the big ones, just because growing up they were my guys. I just loved them. Sting was another one, but I don't think it was intentional in a sense. Like I didn't try to wrestle the way that they did or move the way that they did. But I think that it's again, it becomes that thing where it's just in your head, right? Where I might not have meant to, but because that's the wrestling that I love and that's the wrestling that I watch so much, it kind of becomes what your brain just associates with. That's what wrestling looks like. Um, a lot of people will have similar things where they grew up watching it done this way, so that's just what it looks like to them in their head. It's not about whether it's right or wrong. It's just that's how it looks. The Bret Hart suplex is a great example. There's a lot of people will probably just teach a suplex that way. Like I said, I was taught a different one, but like
Mhm.
a lot of people would have grown up watching Bret Hart and just have watched it so many times that's what wrestling looks like. It looks like that. Um, so I think that even so, while Edge and Christian, Sting, um, John Moxley, even from like the early CCW days when I found that stuff, I was enamored by everything that he did. Like I think that even though I never looked at all these guys and were like, I want to do what they do, I think that because that's just what appeals to me as a fan, that is then what I project as like a performer.
Do you recall like a specific moment where it all clicked for you and you switched and then decided, okay, I have to put my own little flair on all of these things to stand out?
Yes and no. When I started, I wasn't very good. Um, just because I wasn't athletic. I don't play sport. I played basketball when I was young and then stopped. And then wrestling was like the first physical thing I'd done in a while. Like if you go and watch my early stuff, you can tell that I'm very heavy, out of shape boy. And then just over the years have gotten more like in shape, gotten more into the health and fitness side of things. But when I started, I couldn't do a lot of the stuff that the other boys could. There was a guy that I trained with who was like an athletic specimen. He looked like $1 million. He could do anything and everything. It was the old, the Randy Orton thing, right? If you built a wrestler from the ground up, it was
Mhm.
this guy, handsome, jacked, tall, athletic, fast, like all of it. And I could look at him and go, I can't do any of that. I can do this basic thing, but I can talk really well. That I can do. I can do a character. I don't feel silly screaming and yelling and being vicious or yelling at the crowd. None of that intimidates me. So this I can do. So what I will do is I will emphasize what I can do as much as I can to kind of hide that I'm not as good with this other stuff. And then over time, I've gotten better and kind of, I think, even them out in a bit. I would still say I'm a far better emotive, character based promo wrestler than I am in ring. But that being said, I'm not going to sell myself short. I still think that I can wrestle and run with the best of them. But I know where my strong suit is as well. So I don't think there was a moment where I was like, this is it. As much as it was almost like I think a defense mechanism at the start of I have to do something to stand out from everyone else. And I have this, so I'm going to run with this. And then I just think over time, it kind of became the thing that people kind of connected with the most. So I realized that it's part of my brand. Like I can't just stop. It is a part of like what I am. Like when someone wants to see Edward Dusk, that side of it is a part of what they're paying to see, which is amazing because I love that, some people could have moves or spots or something, and I have a character, which to me feels even more important because you can grab someone else that can do the flip. You can grab someone else that can do the spot. You can't just grab someone else to do Edward Dusk because there's only me. And I think that that's something important. And it's not just character because there's plenty of people that can wrestle a match or do moves that no one else can. And that's what makes them unique. But again, back to that being my strong suit, that's just that thing that I guess in a sense has clicked to me of this is my brand, this is what I bring, and this is what I need to not so much focus on, but lead with, I suppose.
And that's another thing I've seen with the evolution of your character as well. You mentioned at the start you were happy sort of yelling, screaming, being really intense. These days, some of the promos go the total opposite way. You're just very quiet, calm, but it's menacing at the same time. How do you go about that evolution? Is that just from practice?
I think a bit of practice, and also I'm very conscious of what I put out there. Granted, no one's going to spend as much time with my work as I do, because I'm thinking of it, I'm coming up with it, I'm performing it, I'm editing it, recording it. I'm thinking of the match. I'm thinking of the story of the match. I'm having the match, portraying that story. Then I'm rewatching the match. I'm getting feedback. Like I'm spending more time with it than everyone. And I preface all that to say, like, whenever I do stuff, I'm always trying to be conscious of what I've done before. And you might see my promos and never see me repeat something, and you might feel like, this is always so fresh and it's different. Dusk never does the same thing twice. Whereas I'm being probably, and this is what I said before, right? Like, if when you take wrestling away, I've got nothing else going on. Is I'm so hypercritical of myself that before I make, say, a new promo, I want to go rewatch the last couple that I did. I don't want it to look the same. I don't want it to sound the same. I don't want it to feel the same, which can sometimes get difficult if different promotions are kind of reaching similar points. Like if I'm in, let's say, two feuds and they're both reaching fever pitch, it might make sense for two promos to both
Mhm.
be very loud, very aggressive, very yelling. But if I put them both out, they kind of bleed into each other. And again, someone might not watch both. And the person that does watch both probably might not think twice about it. But this is where my brain just won't switch off and I can't just go, it doesn't matter. I have to look at it and go, well, how do I make this work? How do I differentiate these two things to make them stand out and live on their own? So I think that doing it more, and also just finding, I guess, more of a voice, like any wrestling promo, right? You can yell and scream and that's cool, but you got to connect as well at the end of the day. And I think that with the character that I've created is, like you said, there's a way to do these calm promos that can come across just as intimidating as if I was yelling and screaming at the camera. But you can make, and this isn't just my promos, this is any promo, I feel, is you can make those rises in emotion, whether it's yelling, whether it's rage, whether it's happiness, whether it's sadness, whether it's despair, whatever it might be, you can make them mean more by, I guess, earning them in a sense. Like you can start a match with a Canadian destroyer and the crowd will react, but it will mean
Yep.
more if you build to that move, that goes for anything, right? Like you can start a match with a side headlock, but if you build a whole match around it, you can probably get a side headlock over as a finish. Promos work the same way. If I'm angry at my opponent, I can yell and scream through the promo and tell you that I'm angry. But that's like performative, right? Whereas when we're angry, we're not always just yelling and shouting. Like, and we as people know that. So that's where I feel like you can do so much more with having those levels. I can be calm and be intimidating. I can be calm and be angry. I could be calm and upset. I don't need to yell at you for you to comprehend what I'm saying. So I think that it does come with time and again comes with like connecting to an audience. And also, I guess, having that confidence slash criticism of myself to be able to go, done that before. Now I've got to do something different. I've got to make it unique. I've got to make it stand on its own, whatever it might be. So it just becomes that I can't just yell all the time. I can't just be monologuing and being, the calm, cool villain. Like I've got to yell at some point. I have to show emotion and express things, but just finding, I guess, the time to do them, which really just comes with time and practice and feeling it, I suppose.
And I guess that's the joy of creativity, trying to find all of those new ways to present similar themes, similar stories, but in a fresh, unique way.
Oh, 100%, because that's all it is. Like, I go on a whole diatribe about it, but that's because that's really what it is. It's just being creative and not just being stuck in, or I'm doing a promo, so I yell, or oh no, my character doesn't yell, so I'm not going to yell. Like, part of a living, breathing, creative thing is that it can like ebb and flow, and you have to be comfortable with that happening.
So, as I mentioned in the intro, you're a former OPW tag team champion alongside Gangrel. I imagine as a sort of attitude era wrestling fan, that was a special moment for you.
Oh, 1,000%. I think if you go and watch the match, you can see that I last maybe half that entrance before I'm just all excitement. The minute Gangrel kind of actually came out, I was like, all right, I'm 7 years old
Characters out the
again.
window right now.
I am in the Brood now. I am Edge and Christian. Let's go. Um, because it really did start with, I put out a tweet that said something along the lines of like, I'll join the Brood. And it just snowballed from there. I was like, I'll make a joke, Everyone, we've got the running gag of like, oh, is he a vampire? Is he not a vampire? I can play into that. I love Gangrel. Maybe best case, I'll get to like wrestle on the show and I might meet him. And then I thought maybe I'll get to wrestle with him. And then it became, right, you're going to team with him. And I thought, awesome. And then we won the titles, which was even more insane. Um, it was definitely probably the most just unexpected thing from like beginning to end that I wouldn't have predicted any of it. But like you said, it was everything is out the window. This is just the coolest thing one of the coolest things that I have done. Come out to the Brood music, like win tag titles with Gangrel. Um, and again, like coming up, like the first feud I saw was like Edge and Christian turning on Gangrel for Gangrel to join the Hardys. Like that whole new Brood story was one of the first things I saw. So the Brood is one of my like earliest wrestling memories, and so specifically like that. So to be, in the most minutia small part of it, um, was awesome.
And you mentioned the not a vampire running gag. How did that situation come about, and how do you feel about that sort of your character being described as a vampire by some people?
I can't remember how it started at all. I think just people on Twitter. I think there was like some show where someone was explaining like who I am, I think, or something, and they just said, "Oh, he's a vampire," and I think it became a gag from some people to be like, "I how?" Because I'm not like spitting blood. I'm not doing like a Gangrel thing.
Yep.
Um, but I'm not against it. I like that it's become this thing onto itself. Because again, like we said, the character connecting, right? Which is, again, I have this thing that's just tied to me, which is random people arguing not even arguing online, but having this joke of he's a vampire, he's not a vampire, whatever it may be. But I also like it because I don't think that Edward Dusk is something that you can just go, it's this in this box, there you go, that's the character. You know what I mean? Like, there's as someone who like I've been saying prides themselves on having this like character based wrestling. I like that my character isn't just oh he's this, oh he's
Mhm.
that. I like that there is, I guess, in a sense, a bit of like self-interpretation to it. Because there's lots of things that I'll do that I kind of like to leave somewhat ambiguous. So you can kind of pull not your own meaning, like it's not that deep, but you can kind of put your own like interpretation to it. Um, it was something I've spoken about before, which was something I got told um, very early on, which was you should know everything about your character. No one else needs to know it all, but if you know it, you have it there to then inform everything else. It can be all fictional. It could just be your life, like your real experiences, whatever it may be. It could be a blend, whatever. You don't need to express all of that so everyone knows, your life story and, the whole thing. But if you know those things, you can then inform what you do because you have those things in your head. And then the audience can learn them over time, whether it's through a story, whether it's whatever it may be. But you have all these things there that people can take and connect with. And I think that there's something that I enjoy that I have a character, like I said, that can't be put in a box, but that people can kind of pull their own little version of things together, where people will probably all have somewhat of a majority of the same kind of idea. There's some themes in there that, you can't miss, obviously a bit of a psychopath, a bit of a sadist, loves fighting, loves violence. There's the whole occult witchcraft stuff that's very prevalent in everything I do. Like, there's things like that which are just there. They're very in the forefront. You can't ignore them. And then there's a lot of other little details that are in there that I know you might find them and you would say, hey, well, this is my interpretation. And I might say, bang on, absolutely. Or I might go, no, actually, but that's a very interesting way to look at it. And I think that that works, especially for the character that it is, that there is that bit of, I suppose, for lack of a better term, like a mystique that you
Yep.
don't know just all the details. Um, so yeah, I think that as even though that this vampire thing's going on, like that was never something I intentionally did, but I think that that is a byproduct of the fan can then grab it and go, well, I think this, and now it can be a thing. Now it can go off and do whatever, which I think is cool.
And then I guess it can feed back into it as well, where you can sort of put out elements that play off that joke a little bit without sort of cementing that, yes, that is what the character is.
Oh, 100%. Because again, you have these things that connect with the crowd, right? And then you can then feed back into them, just like you're saying. So, like, doing the Gangrel team thing becomes this, it works because of this little inside joke within like the Australian wrestling fandom. It's not because, oh, I love Edge and Christian and the Brood. It's come about because of this other inside joke that I had no bearing on whatsoever. But then at the same time, like I could easily do something in a match or a promo or something where you could kind of wink and a nod to like the whole is he a vampire thing, and the crowd will get it because it's this inside joke amongst themselves, which I think is again that perfect, like that's connecting with an audience.
Yeah, like I think these days now, like if you bit someone in a match, everyone goes, "Oh, it's because he's a vampire."
Perfect, literally perfect. And you could do that and make a whole thing about it if you wanted to. You could do it and have it be a throwaway, whatever you might want to do. I could bite someone in a match and they could cut a promo about how it's not fair to be put in the ring with a vampire. And then I could respond by being like, I'm not a vampire. I don't know what you're talking about. You could do it's, and it's the beauty of wrestling, right? Is that it's one giant and then ad lib, is that you just keep going if you wanted to, but at the same time, you could do nothing with it. It's literally just, and it's why I like perfect little example of something like that is it's just something that's there. It's not going away. We don't have to keep referencing it to make it important. It just exists, and that's what makes it special.
Yep. So then, last couple of things. Last year, you had a series of matches in MCW called the Sacrament. Can you sort of
Mm.
tell me a little bit about the story behind those matches and why you wanted to do that sort of more hardcore death matchy style?
Twofold. One was it was an idea that was brought to me of something just to do, like to have a match type. And the version I got was not bare bones in a bad way. It was bare bones intentionally to give it to me to say, this is the outline of what we're thinking. Go. Do with that what you will. And like I said, hyper analytical of everything. So I immediately went into complete overdrive of this is a test. This is me being given the chance to create something. If I just come back with the same idea and said, yeah, I think it's really good, they're not going to think I'm putting any effort in. So I'm going to go
Mhm.
all in. I made a Google document. I mocked up designs of what it would look like, how we could change the lighting. Like everything that you saw was in this little document that I made to be like, this is my vision of what this will become. And that's how that kind of just came to life. I thought we'll call it the sacrament because of it's like a ritualistic thing in nature, of almost like a purging of a sense. Like Dusk has all this violence built up in him, and then the promos that I did through them, and this is to kind of give away one of those like things that I put in there which aren't in the forefront but are there to find, was all the promos I did were talking about like a garden, that I was in my own garden. And the idea was that like Dusk was rejecting MCW as what it was because he didn't fit in. He needed this. He needed his own little world where he could grow. So that became what in essence it was. So it was a way for Dusk to take all these like this violent nature that he has and that he wants to do and be able to express it freely. No one can stop me. No one can limit me. I am truly free to actually do what I want to do in this ring, which is just unmitigated violence. So then that turned into how does that look? And then like a hardcore kind of style just fits with it. And again, separates it. MCW don't do a lot of hardcore. No, I wouldn't go as I wouldn't put it in the realm of deathmatch. I don't think we really went down that route too far, but definitely like pushing the limits of like that kind of hardcore style of wrestling. Um, and then by doing it that, it looks different because nothing else on the show is doing that. So then I stand out because no one else is having the matches that I'm having. And then it informs the character because what better environment to showcase like, all right, psychopath, a bit of a sadist, loves violence, than being in this match where it's literally the theme of the entire presentation. And then what it does now, and this is the part that I love most about it, retroactively, is I don't need to express to you in a promo why I'm so violent or why I'm dangerous or any of those things because you've seen it. And that then creates, again, a connection with the audience of at any point in time, our audience know what Edward Dusk can do because I showed you for a year how violent it can get, how dirty and deep in like the crevices of just violence we can be. So now that I'm not doing it, it's still there in the back of your head. I've got this kind of it's kind of tagged to me at all points in time that that's what I'm capable of. So I have that to, like we were saying before about the promos, I don't need to yell and scream at you about how violent I can be because you've seen it. I can just say something along the lines of, I'm the most dangerous thing in MCW. And you go, yeah, shit, yeah, I saw what you did to people. I'm aware. And we have that built into the world. So now it has more impact. And it works the same way if Slex walks out in MCW and says that he's the face of MCW, he's the ace. You go, yep,
Yep.
you're a heel and you're being a cocky dick about it, but you're right. I can't argue you because he's the only 3-time champ. He's been there since the beginning. He's done it all. We've literally watched it happen. So it now means more, right? Whereas if someone just rolls in and goes, "Oh yeah, I'm the best wrestler here," you go, "Okay, well, prove it."
Prove it.
You know, And then you could tell that story, of course, but coming back to what we're talking about, right? That's where the sacrament now, because it's a part of my canon, right? My world, is we have that to use. You know, we can have characters be like afraid of me or hesitant to face me, and it doesn't really make them look like a coward because all they need to say is like in the ring with Dusk, like I've seen what that looks like. I'm a bit hesitant to do that now, and it's an easy story to tell straight away. And it also gives us a bullet in the chamber now of we have a match. I have a match. I can have a
Yep.
feud build, and I have my own match that I can give it. I don't need to rely on another stipulation. I have my own one, which hopefully then in time becomes that's what you want to see, right? It's almost like when for like that good period where like every big Triple H feud would end with Hell in a Cell. You always knew it was coming because he would love doing the Hell in a Cell.
Mhm.
Same kind of thing of every time we start ramping up a feud, hopefully the audience start going, I reckon they're going to do a sacrament. I reckon that's where this is going. And then you can build to it. And then when you can announce it, it's a thing that you can build a show around, advertise a show around. And now it's so much more than just a match I can do to showcase my character. It's a whole thing we have as a company to use, which I think is what makes it so unique and important. And again, back to what we said before, it's mine.
Yeah, no one else can come in and really do that match without you somehow being involved.
No, well, like if someone did come along and did the same kind of thing and called it something else, you'd run in probably fairly fast of a fan base going, this is just what, that's just the sacred, you're just doing Dusk's thing.
Yep.
And then because it's again because we've made it mine, you can't just take it and use it because it's mine.
Yeah, like we've seen in EPW, they're doing Solomon Blackwell doing the pen,
Mm,
which is like
yep,
it's a match of his own, but it's not the sacrament. It's his own sort of pure
correct.
rules style match.
Which is a perfect way to do the exact same thing. And I have no idea if it was kind of like if it was an influence or just how do we showcase Solomon as the terrific pure wrestler that he is, or what if and it might have just been complete coincidence. But again, it doesn't matter because they are unique. It's giving a wrestler a match type, which isn't something new. That's pretty standard. But again, for all those same reasons, now Solomon has this little corner that's unique and special to him. And that, you know, we can build an entire show around the idea that Damian Slater might enter the pen with Solomon Blackwell. And now you can make a story on the fact, like they are, that Damian Slater won't do the pen with Solomon Blackwell. And it's
Yep.
literally just based on Sol is a very terrific, pure wrestler who wants to wrestle the best to prove that he is the best. And then he challenges the guy who is the best, and he goes, no, I don't want to. So now you have this opposition in this story of is Damian Slater turning it down because he's like, I am the best, I don't need to prove it to you? Or is it because Damian Slater thinks that if he goes into this match with Solomon Blackwell, he might lose, and then he's not really the best wrestler anymore, is he? So now you have a story, and it's unique to them because they've created this match around Solomon. So again, for all the same reasons, a terrific example of what you can do with a character, because Solomon Blackwell is a terrific character of a wrestler. Meanwhile, completely different to everything that I do, but another great showcase of how important just having a character can be.
Lastly, as we look to the future for the rest of 2024 and beyond, what are the main goals for Edward Dusk?
Two main ones stand out, or two with a third in the horizon. The rest of the year, there's definitely two focuses. Obviously, my main places that I spend my time are Wrestle Rampage and MCW. And in Wrestle Rampage, I have Havoc in my way. I won the Conquest tournament, beat three men in one night, and I can challenge for his national championship whenever I want. I'm not going to do it at the next event because it's his 25th anniversary, so he can have his precious little celebration. But I want the championship that should be mine. So that's goal number one. The other one, MCW, is the icons. And it's a bit of a
Mhm.
loaded question because first and foremost, there's the lot of them. We have Fight to Survive coming up. They've picked their team. They've chosen their little social influencer brothers to join them. I'm sure now that I know that the Pario are siding with me, that they're going to rip those two to absolute shreds, and I will watch with a smile on my face as it happens. But we have the objective of stopping the icons. Their bullshit has gone on long enough. They've taken over show after show after show. I'm sure all the fans are sick of it. I'm sick of it. So we're going to stop. That's the first stop. And in that is Ricky South, who stole the ballroom brawl from me and Delta. That's the next objective. They've brought him in seemingly to take me out. So if that's the game we want to play, that's the game we're going to play. We had a match and I tried to I was playing by the rules, being a good boy. He wanted to use the exposed turnbuckle and cheat. So if we're playing that game, I will play that game. Ricky is the next objective. But at the top of the list, and the reason why I say it's a bit in the future is because there's a lot of things to tick off this list. The icons aren't going to go down easy. Ricky's not going to go down easy either. But at the end of it all is the MCW World Championship. Slex has it, and Ricky has the ballroom brawl shot. He's clearly just going to hold that hostage. We'll take care of that when it comes to it. But that's the goal. That is the paramount number one objective I have in my entire wrestling career is winning that championship. That's the goal.
And then next year, we've got the Australian Showcase in February. Is that sort of on the horizon as well for you? Is that something you're looking at as well?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. What it all takes shape as, obviously, it's still early days for a lot of it. We'll find out. But obviously on the map as well. I think hopefully for the Queensland scene, it'll be exactly what it was for the Perth scene when we had Chamber over there, which was tons of eyes really getting the chance to see the product that one of the other states put on. We're very lucky over this side of the country. We have MCW, which does fantastically. We have PWA, which do amazing stuff up in Sydney, and people know all about their guys. We have RCW and Rampage over in Adelaide, all doing fantastic work as well, where it does feel that our Queensland scene and our Perth scene sometimes get left behind a little. We talked a little bit about Soul and Slater, but it doesn't put into perspective the great work that goes on over in EPW. And I think that having WWE run a show over there was a great opportunity for all those guys to have all these new eyes on them to show them that you might see a lot of what's over the other side of the country, but it's just as good over here. And now you've got Queensland, who over the last few years have done a tremendous job of, I don't know if I would go, I don't know enough to say rebuilding the scene, but they've at the very least remodeled the scene, seemingly for the better. I've been lucky to go over there a couple of times, and the community there is fantastic. The talent is only getting better. There are some tremendous people there already. As much as I hate him, Bobby Bishop is terrific, and the school that he's leading is obviously making a change over there. So hopefully, with now eyes all on Queensland, it will give that crew of people a great opportunity to show only the rest of the country, but all the people from around the world that might descend on Queensland for the show to showcase just how good they are and how they can hang with all the other states around the country as well.
Brilliant. Alrighty. Thank you for joining me and good luck with achieving all of those goals. But where is the best place for people to support you and track this journey as you move forward?
Instagram and Twitter will always be the best bet. They're both at Dusk Eternal _ those are your best bets. There's other pages, but they're barely touched. So for all your Dusky needs, Twitter and Instagram, those are your best ones.
Perfect. Alrighty. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.